Right? I think we're live.
Perfect. Today, we're going to be showing how motivation and camaraderie brings out the best in all SDR teams around the world. How can motivation help SDRs unlock their full potential? We're going to start by introducing Navia. Navia was the director of communications at the city of San Antonio. Now she's breaking into tech. She's looking for a great place to start to be an SDR. And we'll be discussing how motivation can help SDRs, their managers, and even those in charge of promoting their success. So let's jump right into the motivation aspect.
It's
SDR
great to
sometimes.
be here.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Thanks for that intro, Jonathan.
Of course, you're welcome. And I'll get to the next part. You know how SDRs sometimes just struggle to pick up the phone and make calls. Motivation helps my team and I combat this by seeing the successes of others, which directly leads to more sales, so that we can meet our goals together. Where can you see motivation helping SDRs? We'll start by letting Navia answer first, and it'll be followed by Vishnu after. You're good to go.
Okay, where can I see motivation helping SDRs?
You got
Is
it.
that the question?
Yes.
Well, as you've shared, I am in the process of pivoting my career from public local gov administration into SaaS tech sales. And so, one question that I get consistently in the interviews that I have had is how do you overcome rejection and what do you do when you're told no? I think that it takes a tremendous amount of motivation to continue to execute the responsibilities of the role, despite the less favorable responses. So I think it's all about perspective and taking it as an opportunity to learn, because it doesn't necessarily mean a no right now. It could be a future yes. So having a good mindset and staying motivated to know that you will be successful if you keep executing.
Thank you for sharing. That sounds amazing. I see a little bit of persistence in there too.
Absolutely.
And then Vishnu, when you're ready.
Yeah, so kind of double clicking also on Navia's points. I think it's so much more than simply personal motivation. I feel like the whole team feeling that energy of being together adds a lot into how like personal success is defined in sales. Um,
Mm-hmm.
as most of us know, right now it's just started a new quarter, so our monthly numbers are shrinking from like maybe 5 or 10 to like 0 right now. So we're all starting out new, and from that sense, it's really hard to define concrete progress because you don't have a strict graph in terms of saying that, oh, I have like so much that I've completed, and after reaching this point, I'm like going to the next stage. It's like every time it resets, every call is a reset, every new email is a reset on a lot of things, right? So I feel that in that sense, you can't really sustain a connection with a lot of people you speak with in sales over a very short amount of time. Now, with a lot of prospects, with the emergence of LinkedIn, it's really great that you'll keep in touch with people and each other. You'll get motivation. But I feel like initially, as you're breaking into tech and sales in general, a lot of what happens simply comes from your team. And seeing motivation from your team, seeing your other reps, and colleagues and managers, AEs really crushing it, helps you a lot personally as well.
Thank you for sharing your perspective and your thoughts. Seeing others crush it definitely helps me too. With that, we'll go on to the next point. So yeah, Navia, you're an upcoming SDR who wants to be employed. One of the SDR peers I spoke with struggles to make cold calls remotely when they work by themselves at home. How do you think managers can help with motivating SDRs to succeed when doing cold calls at home?
Um, I would, not having been in that position under a supervisor leading me on that task yet, I would think that the quickest way to gain real world experience in that area would be to go out and engage in conversation with strangers throughout your daily tasks. Whether you're going to the grocery store, going to, run a quick errand, getting gas, hey, just different things throughout your day, whether it's engaging in conversation with the waitress when you go out to eat and learning something new about them. Oftentimes I find that we don't even learn the first name of the people who are providing customer service to us during, our daily routine. And I look at that as a loss on both ends, because you never know where that connection might lead. So I would challenge
That's
people
true.
to go out and just have good old-fashioned conversation.
So you think managers should encourage their SDRs to get out there and experience life, get off the computer, and that'll
Yeah.
translate over to their work experience?
Definitely.
That sounds amazing. And Vishnu, when you're ready.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Simply like picking up the phone, making some calls, and just knowing that your whole team is there with you. Everyone's doing the same thing. Especially, if there's a certain uniqueness with certain companies who prospect other sales teams also, which is something I'm fortunate to have. Like the people I'm calling are also calling other people. So I feel like that's probably unique, but just hearing a call go through, hearing how someone's day is going on, and just having like a longer conversation even on some cold calls really helps with that. So I'd say like, every day, sometimes for me, it just starts out new, but once I start picking up the phone, it's hard to let go of that.
Mhm.
That's amazing to hear your experience. Once you get that momentum going, it keeps on rolling.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And
What,
what are
what
some
about for
ways?
you, Jonathan? I'm
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested to know more. What motivates you?
Oh, right now there's just so much to learn. That's what motivates me. The fact that there's just so much I don't know, and that people are willing to. Everyone has something to offer that I can learn from. Anyone and everyone who's offered help to me on LinkedIn has provided some knowledge to get me to where I am today. And with that, I really want to just return the favor and help other individuals succeed. It would be amazing if I could see Navia get to wherever she wants to be over the next 2 weeks. That would be an
Thanks,
amazing goal.
Jonathan. Yeah, I appreciate that. I have set an internal deadline for my job search, but not willing to risk, of course, um, my certain requirements that I'm looking for in a company or team that I join. So I appreciate your effort and the chance to speak with y'all today.
Of course. And the pleasure is reciprocated. It's great talking to you again, too. And if you're ready, we'll be moving on to the next item. What are some ways do you think, or as you know, how quarter one just ended? Many teams met their quota, but many also have not. Motivation would help by giving many the extra push we need to be able to finish strong, just to finish off the last few days or hours for some people. How do you think motivation can help SDRs reach our goals like quotas or even managers themselves? It's all right if you don't have the experience. I just want to hear your perspective.
I think to Vishnu, some of the points Vishnu's made about team and collaboration, I would say that having a common goal and strategy to meet that goal with your cross-functional teams is really important, because it's great to have all of the motivation in the world and, have the camaraderie that's there. But if you don't have clarity around what needs to be achieved incrementally so that the final goal can be realized, then it's lost time and energy. right? And in sales, it could come at the cost of a greater revenue return for the company. And so I think it's certainly something to think about, having focus directed towards the right unified goal. So
I love the answer.
thanks.
Focus towards a
Yeah.
unified goal.
Mhm.
That's very interesting. Navia and Jonathan, I was on a webinar with Jesse Gittler maybe like 3 days ago, and he kind of picked me out of the audience to pitch him like instantly. And out of the blue, I started going through my talk points, and then in the middle, he kind of cut in, and he was like, "So why should I care?" And Jesse is kind of our ICP here. So I kind of gave him a certain statement, and he was like, "Why should I care about that?" And it kept going until like, why should I care about this? We probably went to like 5 or 6 different points, going up like a hierarchy. And around the top of the hierarchy was exactly what you said. Like, it's a collective goal. If an SDR team does well, manager does well, that means the SDR is also doing well, and the whole company is doing well. Especially, we're seeing such a divergence in terms of how new companies are doing their go-to-market function. I feel most new companies out of Y Combinator or incubators of that kind start out with a product-led strategy. They optimize for referrals or using the product to drive further growth. And we have other companies like Gong, Outreach, for example, sales tools themselves starting out with a very sales-driven growth strategy. And there are other kinds of growth like marketing-led growth, or channel-led growth, partnerships, and so on as well. So I feel like tying the SDR role to the bottom line of the company also ties the whole SDR growth effort to product teams as well, because SDRs are the front lines to what customers are talking about the space, about this product. So the product managers and product marketing managers can consider this to kind of go forward and say, here are the features that customers are demanding, and here are their problems, right? How do we cross-reference these two? And that'll then lead to some accountability for engineers to prioritize which features they build first. So in the end, kind of just going all back to how an SDR can drive a certain company forward really lends it to being such a cross-functional role and cross-functional position, I feel.
That's
There's a
great.
lot of, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of great info there that you shared. I like the idea of, the user informing the product design with the engineers. I think that's really critical, especially like you mentioned in today's market and how growth is happening.
Yeah.
Wow.
Has there been any instance of that you've come across? Any interesting company that you feel caught your eyes? Like, oh wow, they're growing such a different way compared to like other teams.
Yes, I've had some great conversations recently with different companies, and you can tell, whether it's enterprise, well-established versus a new startup, looking to gain their Series A. So wherever they're at, almost what they prioritize, you can see the differentiation there. So I see differences in almost how they value communication internally. And, certainly that's something also to think about when interviewing. It's a two-way street, right? So
Yeah,
that's something that I'm trying to be cognizant of as I'm having these conversations. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, and let's start to end it by asking some more lighthearted questions. What's the work culture you're looking for, Navia?
Well, so for the last almost 4.5 years, I worked in public admin and local gov. So customer service is huge for me. Working oftentimes just on that limited resources with direct facing to the community is something that I have a lot of experience in, and something that I believe developed my interpersonal skills. And so I really value companies that prioritize the human aspect within the sales team, right? Focusing on solving the problem of the customer more so than their product. I think that's extremely important for informing, also, like Vishnu said, more innovation between cross-functional teams. So that's really what I'm looking for, somewhere that embraces great internal communication, collaboration, and innovation.
Very interesting you mentioned Navia. So do you feel that how important do you feel like listening to your customers is? Because I've heard both sides of it, and it does seem kind of to be polarized on LinkedIn, if I already used that word correctly. A lot of people, especially like as it's talked about in books like Crossing the Chasm, the famous marketing book, it's like listen to your customers early on and drive that iterative loop to go back to the product, go back to sales, and then put out the right message. And there's this other side. It's, your customers are only going to tell you what features they want. It's up to you to determine what is the actual problems they're facing, and you should come up with the features that'll solve that problem. So you said it's very important to prioritize the customers or the product. Completely agree. Getting the customer in early on is definitely the way to go. You don't want to have a waterfall kind of a approach, right, where you build everything first and then see are people going to buy it or not. But how important do you see listening to customers, and how often do you feel it should be done?
I think it's incredibly important because of the competitive nature of the market in all areas, unless, it is a startup with a very niche area they're pursuing. Just because the opportunity to differentiate is in the personalization in solving these problems. Consumers have so many options and decisions presented in front of them. So what makes a company stand out? Is it something that strikes, the emotional chord within the consumer? Is it that they're a green company? Is it that they, take a certain position on other issues? Is it that they're based out of a certain place in the world? Do they have excellent transparency about who's executing the work that the customer is ultimately paying for? How do they tell their story, right? How do they get the customer to buy in? So I think it's looking at what makes you stand out and why should the customer choose ultimately to spend their money with you. And how can you steward that service ultimately, and it not just being another checkmark sale. I think people just want to know that someone's actually invested in helping them solve their problem. Because if they didn't need help, they wouldn't be, putting up the money to have you help them with it. So I think that it's a two-way street. Also, you want to listen, but be critical of the advice, right? I think the engineers and experts should listen to the subjects in the matter, right? There's a saying I like. There's a saying I like that says, I'm not the expert on the subject. I am the subject. And I think that's a great way to illustrate how the two inform the other. There's nothing that compares to a lived experience. So that was my long-winded answer to that question.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Who do you think should be stewarding it, stewarding the discovery of the pain points? Is it the SDR, AEs, customer success?
I think it has to have I think it has to be a collaborative effort, because one thing that often was frustrating, and this is just me being transparent, and I think people who've worked in public admin, local gov can relate, is that oftentimes we're working very hard with limited resources, but we're often very siloed. And so we don't know how to design the service to work smarter, not harder, so that we can actually deliver the service that we've promised to the customer. So I think it has to be about collaboration between all teams, and it doesn't have to be like scary or this like you know, another problem where you have to get more data on the data and like recreate the wheel.
Right.
Yeah, I think it just takes motivation to want to do it.
Yeah, Navia, hearing about collaboration is amazing, but with your experience, what's your biggest advice for teams that aren't collaborating as much? How would you get them to collaborate more together?
That's a great question. Oftentimes, I think it has to be fostered by leadership. I think leadership needs to create opportunities for that to happen. One thing that appeals to me with, going into sales is that this role is really focused in rewards and promotion based on merit. And, in some industries, we don't see that happening. It's more based on seniority or title, different, internal politics. And so I think that it's really up to leadership to set the example for the teams and cultivate it, set the tone. Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
What do you think, Vishnu?
Yeah, it is interesting. I've worked in projects and teams where collaboration was. I feel like there are three different types of collaboration or collaborative environments I've worked in. The first one is like heavy on tools, using Slack a lot, and kind of getting on video conferencing a lot, and kind of not really centered around activity, but more centered around kind of like just talking about things or creating agendas. Like we used to run like 3-hour long meetings, and I feel like that could have been way more efficient. But this was for like a competitive project, so maybe that was better then. I can't really judge. But the second approach was kind of, I guess, more async. A lot would happen over email or like Slack, and not so much face to face. And there'd be like long text, paragraph of text, and I didn't really feel that was collaborative. I felt that was more keeping us accountable and just making sure everyone gets the right information. And the third one is very much like activity driven or like presence driven. So that's where you meet for certain. I guess you meet around certain work you're doing. As you kind of get questions, then you instantly try to get answers. And that's kind of what I've been observing in many SDR teams as well. It's like you meet for power hours or you meet for a call blitz, and then you can kind of dial together. And after that, you can kind of send emails alone. You can kind of prospect alone, or if you have any questions with your AE on how to prospect better, kind of hit them up, right? Get them on a call, do a prospecting block, and then, there you go. So the third type is like very collaboration heavy on certain activities or certain goals. And that would be something I feel, as you said, should come from the top. It should be like definitely inspired by leaders. Kind of leaders need to proactively get people together to do work together, kind of a thing. So that way it leads more informal moments for just chatting about strategies, chatting about things outside of work, or it's kind of more impromptu and natural, I feel, than if it was like forced, so to speak.
Yeah. No, I like this. It's almost post pandemic, I don't know, are we still in it? Not really sure anymore. But it's like we're almost redefining what it looks like, with remote work being the new common norm, and
Norm.
yeah, and hybrid work as well. So it's like redefining also what collaboration is and what that looks like for different companies. So it's interesting what you said.
What do you think, Jonathan? I mean, I think like a month ago you were working at an ice cream shop, right? In-person retail, and now you're working at a fully remote startup, I guess, as part of your apprenticeship. So you've been in school also. You're part of the Army Reserves. You must have seen how different teams work. How do you feel collaboration, should happen in a team like this?
When it comes to an in-person team, it's a lot different. You can just go up to somebody, pull them aside for a minute or two and talk to them. But when you're on a remote team, it just becomes, the dynamic changes a little bit. Sometimes I'm especially new to the remote team environment, so I don't have too much experience yet, but sometimes I find that I have to kind of push myself in there to get a little bit of time when it comes to needing coaching. And I actually have to be proactive when reaching out for it, because sometimes your SDR managers may not have enough time to help you. So you really have to, something I'm still experimenting with myself, as the remote collaboration thing is really new to me.
Awesome.
I don't have too much to say about it just yet.
No, Jonathan, thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that you were in the Army Reserves. Thanks so much for your service. I'm from San Antonio. That's Military City, USA. So I really appreciate your service. So thanks so much.
Thank you for your support.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And, awesome. Do you have any last questions?
So I know that you're in let's see, I joined your live stream last week for your first week in SDR sales. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it was your second week this week then. How did that go?
This week was a little bit of a break. It's actually pretty refreshing after 2 weeks of grinding.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm making my final decisions for the next steps. I chose a company. I'm moving forward with the next steps, and I won't let anyone here know about it yet. It'll come out as a LinkedIn post. It'll be a surprise.
Right.
Look forward to it.
We'll stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Always grinding on a LinkedIn, right, Jonathan? How much time do you spend on average writing your LinkedIn posts?
Likely too much. I'm not the best writer at the moment, so it takes a little bit more time for me, but it's something I'll get better at with more time and experience.
Navia, are you kind of creating LinkedIn content more frequently than you have, or what are your thoughts around that?
I've been actually following people in the SDR, AE sales, tech sales space, and just learning all that I can. I'm not currently creating content for LinkedIn on this subject. Well, there is, ideas that I have because this is a new opportunity for me to learn. I'm just at that stage of my experience, but I'm enjoying learning from everyone that I follow. It's been like, I'm just like a sponge and taking in as much as I can. So
yeah, I see.
Stay
Awesome.
tuned for that.
Yeah.
Looks like Eddie, the hyperactive salesman. Let's go, Eddie. He said, you need my secret to content creation. We'll stay tuned for that.
All right, bro. I will look into that. Let me go ahead and give him a follow.
Yeah, I appreciate Anthony Natoli, Gordon So, Dr. Jim, and Eddie for commenting. It's awesome that you guys are watching. It's encouraging. It's Jonathan's second webinar. It's my first.
That's all right. My first wasn't the best either, but you're doing amazing, actually.
Thank
This
you.
is a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is great. We should do this more often.
Yeah, so that actually leads
Anytime.
to the next thing. The idea of Pay It Forward Friday actually came forward when I started here on LinkedIn not too long ago with nobody, with like zero connections, and with just a handful of friends who were supporting me. And now it's like you have the world helping push you up. With this, just I realized I wouldn't be where I am today without the community. And since I'm part of that community now, I thought I might as well try to uplift other people. Even if I myself don't have a lot of experience, I can still give it a shot. And if it helps people break into SaaS in a form of an SDR, perfect. That's even better. I like seeing more upcoming SDRs get into this field.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I think that motivation and leading with that empathy is going to take you really far.
Thank you so much, Navia.
Yeah.
But recruiters out there, hiring managers, give Navia a shot. Make sure to check out her profile.
Thanks for the shout out, Jonathan.
Of course.
It looks like Rohan Suri, your hiring manager, Jonathan, is watching too. He said Friday evening sales talks. Rohan, we should have you here sometime to chat about how you're building your sales team as well. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yes,
And
thank you for having me, Jonathan. Great to meet you, Navia, and
You too, Vishnu.
it was so much fun. I learned a lot.
yeah,
Likewise. Look forward to doing this again sometime. Can't thank you enough, Jonathan. This has been a lot of fun.
of course. And I think I might have missed it, but I think you said something a few seconds ago about being hired next time you're going to be here. Something
I
about
say
finding
that?
your full-time. I think
What?
so. If you didn't, you said it now.
Yeah, I guess they'll have to. I guess we'll have to wait and see, right?
Yeah. I hope you guys have had a great end of quarter one. I hope you guys are gonna enjoy your weekend after this stressful week, especially for SDR managers, SDRs, and everyone else from above who supports. Have a great evening and signing out. First week of Pay It
Bye.
Forward. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.